Hello there. My name is Olfen. Now, if you follow me here or on social media, you'll know I'm a big 40k fan. I also do a lot of writing, but if you know me in person, that's no surprise, but I typically don't showcase much of my own writing because it's mostly fan-written stuff like fluff for my 40k armies and other bits and bobs. When I was about 6 years old, my mother bought the Star Wars original trilogy on VHS for my birthday. Since then, I've watched the original trilogy countless times and the prequel equally so. A lot of my childhood was influenced by Star Wars, from the movies to the Thrawn series of novels, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, Battlefront, so on and so forth. Since then, my love for Star Wars hasn't dulled, if not taken a back seat to the likes of 40k, Warcraft gaming and just stories in general, but I've always had a special place in my heart for Star Wars. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi broke my heart. It didn't help that when The Force Awakens came out, I was still in a bad place mentally, so when it was announced, I kinda clinged to it, hoping that it could help me out of the bad place I was in. J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson have failed empirically. J.J. less so, he's the reboot king, and I think he was a bit of a poor choice for an episode 7. Rian Johnson though, let's just say that if I say how I really feel about Rian Johnson, I would likely be kicked off YouTube, or at least push it like that, I'll probably be on some sort of watch list, but you've seen my ire drawn by the likes of Roman Campos Oriola and Eric Pope of Ubisoft during the Marching Fire fiasco, but this is a whole nother level, let's be fair. In this series of videos, I will be exploring and theory crafting a much more solid Star Wars sequel narrative from the perspective of someone who just loves stories, and I like to think I'm a decent storyteller in my own right, so let's begin. To start off with, we need to look at Episode 6's end. What can we glean from Episode 6 and the events immediately following the end of the film? So we've got the Death Star 2's destruction over Endor, the Empire is defeated, the Rebellion victorious, light prevailed over dark, or Return of the Jedi. So, with those facts in mind, let us look at the state of the main players of Episode 6 at their conclusion. Luke is a Jedi, Han has matured away from his roguish smuggler days, Leia is a figurehead for the Rebellion, New Republic, Vader redeemed, Palpatine dead, Hotel Trivago. Let's look at how the galaxy would progress in intervals of, say, 5 years. Keep in mind, all of the following hypotheticals can be explored within the medium of gaming, comics, novels, TV shows, etc, the gist. 5 years post-Endor. The New Republic in the early stages, Imperial war criminals arrested and put on trial, some have inevitably escaped justice and fled into the unknown regions, the new Jedi Order is formed, Han and Leia conceive Ben Solo. So let's begin. The New Republic will have inherited the Empire's infrastructure, and as major figureheads, Leia, Han and Luke are the ones the Rebellion turn to when it comes to rebuilding. Leia, being the only one with statecrafting experience, takes the reins and becomes the first leader of the New Republic. Han, with his experience, will either become the Admiral of the New Republic Navy, or the Chief of the New Republic Security Forces, harkening back to his days as a smuggler. Maybe Lando could be a better fit for the Navy position, considering he led the strike flight to destroy the second Death Star. Some Imperial officers surrender peacefully, others are arrested. The ones that surrender peacefully are given marginal lenience, whereas the ones hunted down and brought to justice are treated harshly. The ones that escape justice are on the New Republic's most wanted list, and would number between 5,000 and 8,000 individual officers, given the Empire's size and scope, with at least 10 times that for the soldiers and pilots in their command. The new Jedi Order is formed, and Luke Skywalker, with the aid of Anakin, Yoda and Obi-Wan's Force Ghosts, would seek out more Jedi survivors and or Force-sensitive people to train. The new Jedi Order is considered to be an integral part of the New Republic, with the new Jedi serving as keepers of the peace and advisors to the New Republic's politicians and administrative class. Ben Solo is conceived. What, want me to spell it out? 10 years post-Endor, the Jedi Praxium/Academies are set up all over New Republic space. The Jedi High Council is established, the First Order begins to form from the Imperial remnants hiding in unknown space, Luke and Leia are exposed as Vader's children, Ben Solo begins his training. With the Jedi Academies being set up all over Republic space, the new Jedi Order reaches record numbers of students. The date upon which Order 66 was executed becomes a day of mourning, and memorials are built to the fallen Jedi Age New Academy. The Day of Mourning is recognised all over the Republic as a result. The Jedi High Council, led by Luke Skywalker, began to structure the new Jedi Order to complement the New Republic, with the 3 distinct paths of Guardian, Sentinel and Consular having their places within the Order and within the New Republic. In unknown space, the Imperial remnants have a civil war, with several admirals and moffs vying for control over what's left. The war is won by Commandant Brendol Hux, and he begins grooming his young son, Armitage, for leadership within the First Order. Political opponents of Leia Organa Solo expose her true parentage, as well as Luke's. Luke is able to remain in his place within the New Jedi Order as he was transparent and honest with the members of the High Council and the Order at large. Leia's popularity wanes, however, and her credibility and influence begins to take a downward spiral. Ben Solo, now a young boy, begins his training in the New Jedi Order and is personally trained by Luke. By this point, the New Jedi Order has made innovative new designs for the lightsaber, and Jedi Knights are required to master not only the lightsaber and the Force, but also conventional weaponry, namely the DL-44. 15 years post-Endor, the New Republic armed forces clash with the First Order. The Nihilum engine begins construction, more on that later. Rey begins training in the New Jedi Order, and Ben Solo continues training under Luke Skywalker. The New Republic's military presence will be governed by those who led the rebellion against the Empire, so it's only natural their tactical doctrines are reflected by that. Despite the New Republic's military might being the largest and most well-equipped, their tactics are that of a guerrilla force. Instead of throwing battalion after battalion at a problem hammer and anvil style, instead they win by fighting smarter, not harder. This methodology paints the New Republic as deserving of its seat of power, and every soldier and pilot within the organisation is expected to be as loyal to the Republic as they are deadly. The First Order begins expansion into Republic space, and are met by an overwhelming defense, and brief war breaks out on the now wasteland-like forest moon of Endor. Endor, after the Death Star's destruction, pulled all the wreckage to the surface, horribly irradiating, contaminating and scarring the moon. The First Order retreats back into unknown space with the death of Brendol Hux. His son Armitage takes the reins, and in a stroke of luck, General Hux manages to defeat the Republic forces on Endor and establishes a base. The moon is then mined, and part of the Emperor's knowledge is discovered in the wreckage. The plans for the Nihilum engine are written up, and Endor becomes the Nihilum, a planet-sized weapon designed to consume the force energy of a world, including all its inhabitants. Endor is forced from orbit shortly after construction begins, and is not seen again for 20 years. A young scavenger girl from Jakku is discovered by the Jedi Order, and she is brought to the Academy on Tatooine for training. The Academy, being built on the ruins of Luke's old family farm, is a very strong centre of Force energy in Tatooine, and thus Rey's training begins. Ben Solo, learning under Luke, travels to Dagobah to visit the cave where Luke had his vision of Vader all those years ago. During his vision, he finds a lightsaber crystal, and it is damaged during the vision. Concerned over the meaning of the damaged crystal, Ben despairs and enters a depression, viewing it as a sign he is destined to fail. Allaying Ben's fears, Luke suggests the construction of a lightsaber designed to capitalize on those mistakes. To own them rather than fear them, Ben's crossguard saber is created. 20 years post-Endor, FN-2187 is captured after attempting to assassinate Leia. Dantooine goes silent. Ben Solo becomes a Jedi Knight. So, FN-2187, nicknamed Finn, alongside 3 other First Order assassins, infiltrate Coruscant and attempt to assassinate Leia and Han. Finn is captured and jailed for life. The other 3 assassins make it off-world, and the New Republic believes Finn was a lone wolf assassin. Dantooine goes completely silent. No communications are answered, and no ships have left the planet. Ships orbit the planet, their inhabitants all dead. The planet looks dead and feels dead. Luke Skywalker and Ben Solo go to investigate. Dantooine is quickly quarantined by the Jedi Order, sowing seeds of suspicion in the New Republic. Within the Order, Dantooine is labelled as a wound in the Force, and with Ben Solo returning relatively unscathed, he is granted the rank of Jedi Knight. 25 years post-Endor, Rat Attack goes silent, Rey has visions of Jakku, opinion of the Jedi Order begins to sour, anti-Jedi protests, and the First Order promotes 2 more leaders. 5 years to the day of Dantooine's silencing, the planet of Rat Attack suffers the same fate. The Jedi Order, at the behest of the New Republic, double their efforts in their investigation amid rising anti-Jedi sentiment and protests. Rey, fast approaching her ascension to Jedi Knight, suffers horrific visions of Jakku being silenced. She approaches her master, who relays it to the Council. Rey and her master are then given permission to investigate and travel to Jakku. Leia, Han, Lando, and some of the Jedi Order involved in politics struggle to keep the public opinion towards the new Jedi Order as positive, with the public believing that the Jedi are weak for not being able to see and stop this unseen menace. In the unknown regions, 2 seemingly unknown additions to the First Order's ranks are made public as it can be for the First Order, let's be fair. These new commanders are Bridger and Thrawn, both having survived their trip to the unknown regions and have joined forces. Bridger is command of training Force-sensitive soldiers to combat the new Jedi Order, and Thrawn is in charge of the First Order's fleets. Hux continues being the commander of the ground forces. First Order infiltrators begin to spur up protests and even riots at Jedi academies. Luke requests Ben go to the Tatooine Academy to help the students and masters there. The protests are guises to sabotage the academies, and the academies on Yavin 4 and Tatooine are blown up by First Order infiltrators. Ben swears revenge, and this is the start of Ben Solo's transformation into Kylo Ren, but I'll get to that in a minute. 30 years post-Endor, Rey and her master go missing on Jakku. Poe Dameron and the New Republic's Rogue Squadron Special Forces group are dispatched to Jakku to search for the missing Jedi. Ben Solo visits Korriban, an ancient Sith world, and discovers several holocrons, leading him to create the Knights of Ren and taking up the moniker of Kylo Ren. FN-2187, after 10 years as a prisoner, finally gives up on the First Order and starts to cooperate with New Republic intelligence. Several years later, Rey and her master, Lor San Tekka, are officially listed as missing on Jakku. While they are missing, Tekka is unable to stop the visions of Jakku being silenced and goes mad as a result, leaving Rey for dead in the unforgiving sands. Rogue Squadron is dispatched and led by Poe Dameron, a veteran X-Wing pilot who first flew at the Second Battle of Endor. As they get to Jakku, the First Order arrive and quietly blockade the planet. Rogue Squadron suffer heavy losses and Poe is shot down, crashing onto the planet. Ben Solo, on a mission for the New Jedi Order to find more information about the Nihilum engine, visits the Sith world of Korriban. Unfazed by the dark side energies, he delves deep into the ruins of an old Sith temple. He discovers a number of damaged holocrons, one from a masked Jedi who refers to themselves as Ren, the other from a Zabrak, also heavily garbled, referring to a deadly weapon and how it ended the Mandalorian Wars. The holocron shorts out before the final piece can be said, which was the fall of Ren to the dark side after using such a weapon. Ben opts to create a secret sub-faction of Jedi Knights, all wearing masks in Ren's style, and taking names to cover their tracks. 10 Knights become the Knights of Ren, with Ben Solo, now Kylo Ren, as their leader. They begin their search for the Mass Shadow Generator. FN-2187, or Finn, finally admits to himself that he has been abandoned by the First Order and begins to cooperate with New Republic intelligence, and he is released under strict supervision as he assists New Republic intelligence with their investigation into Jakku's sudden loss of communication, referring to the blockade, not the Nihilum. Now, that last segment of the 30 years post-Endor, that would actually be like the first act or the prologue to Episode 7, aka The Force Awakens. I'll detail how I would have done 7 with this video as context later, but for now, let me explain some of my choices here. Starting off with the New Republic and the New Jedi Order being established and almost monolithic by the end of the world building phase, and at a very quick pace, shall we say. I found it ridiculous that after 30 odd years, the New Republic and Jedi Order wouldn't be strong enough for what amounts to the Imperial remnants. I see the New Republic being a monolithic entity that still carries the spirit of liberty the Alliance had, and their military doctrines reflect their rebel heritage. The New Jedi Order will also be a monolithic entity, and instead of rehashing the Jedi Order from the prequels, the Jedi Order would work openly with the New Republic, and their importance in toppling the Empire is well known. They no longer train young children, instead they train anyone who is Force sensitive as long as the trainees vow to use their powers for balance. The New Jedi Order will be involved in military and political affairs of the Republic, but they will always heed the will of the Force before every action. Their role in the Republic is to maintain balance on all fields, and are thusly prohibited from any real leadership position outside of battlefield roles and political advisory. The First Order isn't just Empire 2.0, they're the remnants of an empire. The old empire was huge, so it stands to reason that there'll be a lot of die-hard loyalists still in the galaxy. All of these loyalists banded together and fled to the unknown regions, biding their time to try and overthrow the false Republic. Their doctrine almost matches the Republic's. They also use guerrilla strikes and rebel tactics, much to their own disdain. It's a necessary thing though, and while they're not struggling, they certainly aren't prospering either. The Nihilum engine is, what I see, something much worse than a Death Star or a Starkiller base. The Nihilum engine, hypothetically, would drain the Force energy from its target and leave it a completely lifeless husk of its former self. This can be a single planet or an entire system. When in use, every Jedi would feel something is wrong, like with each use, more wounds in the Force open. I also chose Endor as the Nihilum engine because I found it an interesting line of reasoning that a massive superweapon explodes above a planet and all that debris is only going to go in one direction. Now, I know that the Death Star 2 is much smaller than Endor, but the damage would still be catastrophic, I reckon. Kind of a Sins of the Father motif, if you look into it. Now for the characters. Rey, Finn, Poe and Ben are all still there, but rewritten. Rey and Lor San Tekka are designed to be a bit of an Obi-Wan/Anakin rerun, but with Obi-Wan turning to the dark side and not going peanut banana body pillow bonkers instead of Anakin. Rey, by the end of this world building arc, would still be a Padawan, now with severe trust issues, and with an incomplete set of skills with the Force. She would also not have her own lightsaber, instead using a rebuilt Electro Staff until she inevitably crafts a double-bladed saber. Finn is also wildly different. Instead of being a First Order Stormtrooper, he is a First Order Assassin. His failure and arrest at the hands of the New Republic is well known and highly publicised, and it will be made clear that Finn can hide his thoughts and intentions eerily well. So much so that even Skywalker's Jedi Order can't discern his true intentions. At the end of his world-building arc, he will be working with the New Republic as they look into the First Order and kind of beginning to change sides. Poe is relatively unchanged comparatively, being the commander of Rogue Squadron, an exemplary pilot and very likely to be Force sensitive. There isn't really much to say, but by the end of his world building he'll be focused on surviving Jakku, finding Rey and Tekka, and also suffering a bit of PTSD from the crushing defeat he suffered in orbit over Jakku. Ben Solo, well, he's the most different out of the lineup. He isn't the bad guy, in fact, he is, but because he isn't. I'll explain. In this timeline, he will have completed his training and become a full Jedi Knight. It's only his driven, fanatic obsession with stopping the First Order and defending the New Republic and the New Jedi Order that causes him to go astray. By the end of his world-building arc, he will have formed the Knights of Ren and began the search for a super weapon to counter the Nihilum. On that note, let's go. I feel like a sequel trilogy should focus on threats to either the Force or to the New Jedi Order. The Republic/Empire/New Republic line, I feel it's a bit too overdone, so now the governments are in the background in relation to the saga's actions. I have taken a lot of inspiration and made references to Knights of the Old Republic, mostly because of how close that series is to my heart, and also I think that's some of the best elements to bring into the fold. The mass shadow generator, Darth Nihilus' infamous capacity to consume life and force from entire planets, Revan, Bao-Dur, and Korriban. In case you didn't catch who Ren was, it was Revan, and the Zabrak is Bao-Dur, who created the mass shadow generator, and Revan was the man who made the command. Mitra Surik might factor in later on, but yeah. So with all that in mind, this is how I would have set up the world for a Star Wars sequel trilogy. I would have framed it with the context of how can the stakes be higher after the Death Star, and how can you defeat it without falling back on the same thing again and again and again. Please, let me know what you think. I'm more than happy to listen to criticism or feedback. This is all ultimately a thought experiment, really. I doubt it'll go further than me asking what ifs and waxing hypothetical. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, and if you're not already, consider subscribing. Until next time, my name is Alvin. Thank you for listening, and may the Force